Hey guys, Dr. Hampton here with Dr. Ken Berry. And Dr. Berry is the author of the best-selling book Lies My Doctor Told Me. And our goal here today is to expose the misleading health advice from well-meaning doctors, most of whom really care about you, but unfortunately follow advice from resources like the dietary guidelines that simply do not serve you. The main difference between these docs and the docs like Dr. Berry and myself is that we question conventional wisdom, which has resulted in our ability to help our patients heal more effectively. So, Dr. Berry, let's start with the first lie. And that first lie is that cholesterol should be feared and is the enemy of good health. What do you say about that?
So this is a common myth in medical practice currently. It's very popular to believe this, and it comes out of some of the most ridiculous research that you'll ever read. And most patients don't have time to read the research. They trust that their doctor has done that. But the problem is that many doctors don't read any research at all. And even some of the very best doctors will only read the summary or the conclusion of a research article. They never read the entire article. They never look into the supplementary material. So therefore, if the authors of the article have a preconceived notion or a preconceived bias, that's going to be reflected in the summary. And it's the data that is going to give you an objective answer. And so unless you look at the data, all you've got is perhaps the author's preconceived notions in the summary. And that's where a lot of this comes from. Every medical question, every nutrition question, I put it through three filters. First of all, does it make common sense? Secondly, is it paleoanthropologically logical, right? How our ancestors have lived on this planet for millions of years. Does it make sense in that light, what they're saying? And then number three, meaningful research. And by meaningful research, I mean research that's done in a controlled fashion, blinded if possible, that the researchers have taken every effort possible to keep their preconceived notions out of the results. And that's sometimes very, very hard to do, especially in nutrition. So cholesterol. First of all, let's the common sense. Humans have been eating high cholesterol foods forever, literally for our entirety on this planet. So this makes the claim that cholesterol is bad for you. It makes it an extraordinary claim, doesn't it? It would be like saying that breathing air is bad for you or drinking water is bad for you. You'd be like, what? Wait a minute. How's that possible, right? It doesn't make any sense. So saying that an ancestral food, and most of the food that human beings went after our entire time on this planet, were foods that were high in fat, fatty meat, right? Which is going to be, by definition, high in cholesterol. So this hypothesis, the diet heart hypothesis, is saying an ancestral food that humans have always eaten and indeed went out of their way to get at danger to themselves is bad for you and will lead to heart disease and stroke. And so right off the bat, if you just think about this in a common sense way, you say, well, you better have some damn good evidence to back that claim up, because it's going to be hard for me to believe that water is bad for me, that breathing air is bad for me, or that eating fat, saturated fat and cholesterol is bad for me unless you've got some compelling evidence. So when we actually look at the evidence to see if there's meaningful evidence, we see a lot of epidemiological studies based on food frequency questionnaires. We see a lot of mechanistic evidence where they'll look at a marker. And so eating high cholesterol diet elevated this marker. And we assume that this marker is a proxy for heart attack and stroke. And very often those markers are not at all proxy markers for your risk of heart attack and stroke. And so when you boil all of this down, what you find is that the meaningful research shows that having a high cholesterol and eating a high cholesterol diet is either not good nor bad. It's equivocal, or it's actually good for you and protective against very many things, including dying prematurely and including developing cancer. High cholesterol actually protects you from both of those things. And so I'm afraid that many doctors, including me, Tony, Back in the old days, man, I was the guy. Your cholesterol was the least bit high. It was the least bit high. Even if your triglycerides were high, your Crestor was 5 or 10. That's just how it was going to be. And the research into Crestor doesn't really show any meaningful benefit for mortality, whether you live or die. And for long-term outcomes, Crestor and all the other statins, which are made and FDA approved to lower your cholesterol in your blood, they have just embarrassing results when you look at them objectively.
That's right. And I am so convinced that everything you're saying is true. And I think if anybody listening has a clinician who is still focused on the total cholesterol and they're not looking at breaking it down into the different parts. I mean, you should be looking at ratios as opposed to that. You should also be looking at the particle sizes. So we have a lot of new science that will push us in a different direction. So when you see a total cholesterol and the LDL, you shouldn't sweat that at all. You should focus on these other metrics and maybe even just get a coronary artery calcium score and see what's really going on the inside. So I think that's some very good insight. And again, we shouldn't fear cholesterol like we once did. So thank you
and
for that.
A great test. I'm sorry, Tony, but a great test that a patient can perform on their doctor. Doctors are always performing tests on the patients, right? But here's a test that the patient can perform on the doctor. If your doctor checks just a standard lipid panel, and the only number that your doctor wants to talk about is the LDL cholesterol, and they don't mention the triglycerides, which are probably high, and they don't mention your HDL cholesterol, which is probably low, that is a huge red flag that your doctor has not really been thinking about this in depth and reading in depth. This is a huge red flag that your doctor has been propagandized by the drug reps into believing that the LDL cholesterol is the only number on the lipid panel that really matters. Most doctors realize these days that if you have a high total cholesterol, that really doesn't mean much at all. That's why they all want to focus on the LDL cholesterol now. But if your doctor doesn't worry about your triglycerides or HDL, that's a big red flag, and your doctor just failed that test.
Absolutely. And if I have a patient who is attempting a low carb, keto, or carnivore diet, I immediately look at the triglycerides, which is a great indicator of whether or not they're being compliant with that diet. So we pay attention to that. And we only ask that you do the same and work with a clinician who's also going to pay attention to that. And then you'll be metabolically healthy. And when I say metabolically healthy, I'm thinking about blood pressure, blood sugar, these numbers related to the cholesterol, as well as your belly size. So let's make sure we do that. And so thank you, Ken, for that. And I guess the next slide that we want to throw at you guys is the one related to salt, and this idea that salt is harmful and should be avoided at all costs. So what do you say about the salt question, Doc?
Yeah, again, this is like your doctor trying to tell you that rocks are not hard or that water is not wet. This is just as dumb as that, okay? So every single mammal of any species on this planet has to have a certain amount of salt. They have to have it. They will walk for miles to get it. Human beings are one of these mammals. We crave salt. We love salt. We will go out of our way to get salt to put on our food or just to ingest on its own. We're not doing that because we're gluttons. We're not doing that because we're sloths or because we're stupid. We're doing that because we need that salt. And the really egregious thing about the current salt guidelines is that they would really like you to consume zero salt. They want you to go just drastically low on your salt consumption, to the point where there's actually compelling research that shows that if you eat too low of a salt intake, you're actually doing damage to your heart, to your kidneys. Patients with heart failure, if they follow a low salt diet, they have worse outcomes. And so believe me, people, rocks are hard, water is wet, and you need salt. I think it would be much better for the American Heart Association, who came up with the DASH diet, which is all about eating low salt, right? I think it'd be much better if they said, hey, you need to eat between this amount and this amount of salt a day, because at least that would kind of make sense. But to say you want to get your sodium intake as low as possible, that's really bad, almost litigiously bad advice. That's terrible advice. My good friend, Dr. James D. Nicolantonio, has a great book called The Salt Fix. If anybody really wants to dig into where that we should eat a low salt diet, where did that come from? He breaks it down in The Salt Fix, and that'd be a great way to start to educate yourself. A lot of doctors should read that book too. Every doctor, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So the actual, when you do a meta-analysis of all the randomized controlled trials, we see very clearly that eating salt somewhere between 3 and 7 grams a day that's the healthy spot. And that's why I think the American Heart Association, they should say you need to eat between this and this. That's what the research shows. But rather they would rather spread propaganda that you need to be salt free if you can swing it. But if not, eat as low salt as possible. And that's very damaging advice for the average patient. Guess what, Tony? If you eat between 3 and 7 grams of salt a day, that's salting to taste. That saltiness is where you're going to enjoy it the most. And so I think the best advice about salt is to salt your food to taste. If the food doesn't taste salty enough, add more salt. If it's too salty, then there's too much salt in that. You need to get another serving and put less salt on it. If you do that, your taste buds and your physiology, your hardwired physiology is going to get you the exact right amount of salt that you need every single day of your life. If I were to be like one of those televangelist preachers and reach into the YouTube and pull every molecule of salt out of your body, you would be dead within 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. You understand? So to say that salt is bad for you, it raises your blood pressure. Yeah, if you eat a ton of salt, you might raise your systolic blood pressure 1 or 2 millimeters of mercury. That's inconsequential. Whereas Dr. Hampton and I, we've seen hundreds, if not thousands of patients who have lowered their systolic blood pressure 10, 20, 30 points by eating a low carbohydrate diet. So if you want to eat just a yucky diet with no salt, you might lower your blood pressure 1 or 2 millimeters of mercury. If you'd like to lower it 10 or 20 points, I would recommend a low carb diet and salt to taste.
Yes. And thank you for that. I'm glad you threw that in at the end because we have the benefit with a low carb, high fat diet, keto carnivore diet, where we can eat fat and we can eat salt. So guess what? The food will taste great, but just as importantly, what I tell my patients is that carbohydrates, that's why you hear a water in that word, attracts water and salt into your body. So people eating the standard American diet, you may want to be cautious because you're eating all this food that's going to attract more salt into your body. But when you eat a low carb or keto or carnivore diet, you actually get rid of salt. So we have to bring the salt back in. So not only are you able to eat salt, but your food's going to taste great. So the key is consider the right diet that's ancestrally appropriate, and then you'll be able to eat all these minerals at the level that you should be able to. So thank you, Dr. Berry, for getting rid of that myth. And the last myth I wanted to throw at the audience today is this exercise helps you lose weight myth. And so many of my patients are so surprised when they've been running and jogging and marathoning and all these things they do, and they're like, Doc, I'm still not losing weight. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. People have only so much willpower. They have only so much money, and they have only so much stamina and so much motivation. And so if you're obese or morbidly obese, you just think of it as a wallet. You only got so many dollars worth of motivation and willpower and stick-to-itiveness and actual dollars. You only got so much. And so what you want to do if you're trying to transform your health by reversing your obesity or your morbid obesity, or you're just being overweight, you want to spend your capital, your motivation, your stamina, your persistence. You want to spend all of that on the thing that's going to give you the most benefit, right? You don't want to be over here spending 90% of your resources on something that's going to give you a 1% benefit. Then it's not going to help you. You're going to get tired. You're going to lose motivation. You're going to lose your ability to stick to it, and you're going to give up and quit. And the last thing that Dr. Hampton and I want you to do is to give up on your journey to having a normal body weight, because that is one of the most healthy things that you can possess. Having a belly that does not lap over your belt, having a normal blood pressure, having a normal blood sugar, having a normal insulin level. You want all those things. Now, let me say this before I continue. Exercise is good for you. 100%. It is good for you in hundreds, probably thousands of different ways. I want you to exercise. But what I don't want to do is to mislead you and give you false hope that if you join the gym and you hire a personal trainer and you work out for 4 hours a day, that is the 80% solution to weight loss, because that is a lie. I just posted a YouTube video about this where I admitted I was wrong, because early in my medical career, I figured that exercise was probably 10 or 20% of the battle. I knew that diet was the most important. If you've got a head on your shoulders, you're going to understand that what you put in your mouth is the biggest determinant of whether you gain or lose weight. But I was wrong. When you go back and you look at the meta-analysis of the control research on exercise for weight loss, it's only going to give you 1% of the weight loss that you want. Spend 99% of your time focusing on your food. What should I eat? What should I avoid? That's how you're going to reverse your overweight, obesity, morbid obesity.
Absolutely. And I remember when I was in school, obesity school, and I think that was one of the most shocking things I learned, is that my patients will only maintain the weight they've lost by exercise. And I just couldn't believe it, because everybody in society is focused on, purchasing their exercise, outfits and doing the gym thing before they get started on their weight loss journey. So, and I've had tons of success stories. Even made a video with Mamie Daniels, who had lost over 100 pounds, and she came in with a wheelchair, and then finally a walker with a seat, and then a cane, and eventually she could walk without her cane. But she didn't exercise the entire year. She lost those 100 pounds without doing 1 ounce of exercise. So I think it's important that we prioritize and put things in the right order, and we don't want to put all this effort into something that'll disappoint us.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about just the average patient goes into the average doctor's office. Let's go back in time, 15 years ago. Okay, and you're obese and you're coming to see Dr. Berry. This is me we're talking about. My advice to you would have been, brother, you need to join the gym and you need to join Weight Watchers. That was the literal advice I gave day in and day out 15 years ago, because I didn't know better. And so you're like, well, gosh, money's kind of tight right now. I've only got this part-time job, but he said being obese is dangerous. I need to do this. So, you get the money and you join the gym, and you spend half of your money and half your time on the gym and on exercise. You buy some weights at home, maybe you got a Bowflex, and you've spent hundreds of dollars on something that's not going to help you lose weight one damn bit.
That's right.
I meant well, Tony. I was trying to help you. I believed in what I was saying. I was just wrong, and I was giving terrible advice. And that's what doctors today are doing. If your doctor tells you that the way to lose weight is to move more and eat less, that's a huge red flag that you're probably asking the wrong doctor about that.
Yeah, they're still living in the old paradigm, the law of thermodynamics paradigm, not recognizing all the other factors that contribute to poor health. And where did I get this nest from? Well, it's not just nutrition. We talk about intermittent fasting. We talk about stress reduction. We talk about sleep. We even talk about how you think. That acronym is to remind you that there are many factors that affect your weight. And if you think just exercise is going to do it, that is the wrong answer. So I encourage everybody listening to look at where you have gaps. Where is my relationship dysfunctional? You're probably going to gain weight if it's dysfunctional. Am I emotionally not in a good place? You're probably going to gain weight if you're not emotionally stable. So it's really all of these factors that you need to think about, and you can even problem solve yourself and figure out the solution by just pausing for a moment and recognizing that it's not the gym, but it's these other factors. So again, we really, really, really want you to start thinking outside the box. That's why we're here. That's why we're on a mission to educate everybody, to make sure you understand that there is a path to healing, and the old way is not the path. So Dr. Berry, I appreciate you. And thank you for spending some time today so we can educate our population. And hopefully for those who are watching, Dr. Berry has added some insights that will help you question conventional wisdom and start thinking outside the box. And for those who are curious, about other lies that your doctor may have told you, whether they intended to or not, Dr. Berry's book is a great place to start. I'll make sure to have a link to that in the show notes, as well as your video, Doc, about exercise that you recently did. And I did get a chance to check that out, by the way. So if you like listening to experts like myself and Dr. Berry, and you want to achieve metabolic health, make sure to subscribe to my channel and like the videos, comment, and I just want to encourage you guys to be continuous learners so that you can live the life that was intended. So until we meet again, guys, I want you guys to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest. And Dr. Berry, thank you so much for taking a little moment to be with me today.
It's always a pleasure, Dr. Tony. And all you guys watching, you listen to Dr. Tony because he's going to tell you straight.
That you better know it. So take care, buddy. Take care.
See you later.